Okay, let's get started. This is the Owensboro Board of Commissioners special call meeting, January the 8th, 2019, City Hall. Please call the roll. City Clerk Beth Cecil.
Commissioner Jeff Sanford.
Here.
Commissioner Larry Conder.
Here.
Mayor Tom Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Larry Magliner.
Here.
Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Make a statement first. This is my fault. It's at 3:30. I wanted to do it at noon. No, not at noon. But I think by ordinance, this thing's got to be done at noon on the second Tuesday. Aggravating me. So we wanted to move it to 5 o'clock, and then the city manager told me that, as I was saying, you know, why do we have our best people here for 2.5 hours when they need to be leading our group? And he said, well, I said, why don't we do it at 5? And he said, well, they get comp time at 5. So no matter what, I was screwed. So we split it at 3:30, but we'll go back to noon. How's that? Okay? All right. Pam's got a bunch of things she's got to do on Tuesday, second Tuesday of every month. So having said that, fund balance, Nate Pagan, City Manager. Please, sir. Good afternoon. We're not paying any attention to you, so it doesn't really matter. No, kidding.
At the December 18th commission meeting, our auditor was there to present the annual audit report. It was a good audit, a clean audit, which is, of course, our goal. One of the recommendations that the auditor provided then was to adopt a formal fund balance policy. That was not a new concept to us. Angela and I had had that conversation a couple of times previously over the last few months, so it was a recommendation that I think the staff agreed with and had already identified. So Angela will present the policy here shortly, but if it is something that the commission is comfortable to do, it would be before you for approval at a future commission meeting by municipal order. So Mayor, I would ask that you call on Ms. Hamrick to discuss the policy.
Okay, Ms. Hamrick, could you explain what a fund balance policy is?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be happy to. You'll see in front of you a copy of the fund minimum general fund balance policy. And this was done in conjunction with some input from our auditors, guidance from the Government Finance Officers Association, as well as kind of gleaning and looking at the same situation, same policies of other cities. So if with that, as you look through the policy, I just wanted to speak to that and give a little background information. And so what we're here today is for you all to consider implementation of a formal policy setting the city's desired minimum fund balance for the general fund. A city's fund balance, I wanted to explain a little bit about that for our viewing audience because some people may not know what a fund balance is for the general fund. The city's fund balance is much like a family's checking and savings account combined, okay? A typical family's checking account will pay for their monthly expenses, the utilities, car payment, and so forth. Their savings account will be for vehicle replacement, appliance replacement, and things of that nature. So the city fund balance operates like the family's checking and savings combined. It pays not only for the recurring operating expenses, it pays for the city's operating expenses. And the things that it pays for is like public safety. It's going to pay for your police officers, your firemen, and their vehicles, the apparatus for city administration, and things of that nature. Some of the parks amenities and street maintenance. It's important that the fund balance also has a level of funds to handle the non-recurring, unbudgeted, if you will, situations, such as a storm disaster, revenue shortfall due to a possible recession, or state budget cuts or mandates. So it's important that we have enough in our fund balance to cover more than just what our annual operating budget is. The city has adhered to the Government Finance Officers Association, also known as GFOA, their best practice for minimum fund balance. We just hadn't formally adopted the policy, but like I said, it's something we had always adhered to. The GFOA is a major professional association servicing the needs of more than 19,000 government officials and finance practitioners throughout the United States and Canada. It provides oversight and guidance to enhance skills in financial communication. So what I'm trying to say there is they're a very good source to look to for this guidance. The GFOA provides best practices for areas of financial management, reporting, and planning. The GFOA best practice for the general fund balance includes establishment of a formal policy, appropriate level of fund balance, and the use and replenishment. The GFOA recommends at a minimum that general purpose governments, which is what we are, regardless of size, that they maintain budgetary fund balance in their general fund of no less than 2 months or 17% of regular general fund operating expenditures. Your operating expenditures will fluctuate from year to year, so the fund balance recommendation, that balance will fluctuate as does your total expenditures. By example, and if we could look on our PowerPoint here, our 2018-19 operating expenditure budget for the general fund is $54,883,072. In keeping with the 2-month minimum, we should have a budgeted minimum fund balance of $9,147,179. If you will refer to page 35 of the city's budget book, which you can also find at the city's website at owensboro.org, the budgeted fund balance is $10,224,365. So we are within the parameters of the policy that we're considering today. Having said all that, there is yet another benefit to this consideration. In addition to addressing the auditor's recommendation and implementing GFOA's recommended best practice, our bonding rating agencies look for this as well. Moody's, who rates the city, puts a weight factor of 15% on the fund balance and how we manage that when they do our scorecarding. And that concludes my comments. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So would you say this is like what's the difference between this and like a reserve fund account, or have something in reserves? Is it similar? Is it about the same? Or
Well, the reserve, some people refer to our fund balance as the reserve.
the fund balance itself is your reserve?
Yes, Mayor. Yes, those terms have been used interchangeably. And so what may be helpful, I've got an excerpt from our audit. If you'll refer to the PowerPoint screen, this is from our audit dated June 30, 2018, okay? And so what you can see there is different categories, if you will, in our fund balance, and those categories are set forth and defined by GASB. It's the GASB 54 guidance that tells us how to split that up. Now, what that is going to be your assets less your liabilities, and this is what's left. So it's what I refer to as our savings, reserve, or fund balance. So that all those terms can be used interchangeably.
Okay. Where did that money come from? Just excess money that we raised?
That's correct. That's correct. The revenues, the tax money we bring in, and the expenditures. By example, at the end of fiscal 2018, we had a surplus of 2.4, where our revenues exceeded our expenditures. And so our fund balance, if you will, increased by that 2.4 million.
Okay. Anybody else up here have anything? Commissioner Condor?
Thank you, Mayor. Angela, if you could you just simply, the categories you have there, non-spendable, restricted, committed, unassigned, do you have just generic, easy to understand examples of what those really are? What accounts would they be? For an example, in a checking account, you're going to have electric bills.
Right.
Do you have anything simple that really defines what these are?
We'll get free electricity.
There you go. Okay. Is that in the unassigned account or something? I'm not sure what that is.
Sure. The amount or the categories, as you see spelled out in your fund balance policy, and for the viewing audience, I'll read down through them. They are spelled out and defined by the GASB. The non-spendable is our first category, and that is an item you see that we have $60,636 reserved in our fund balance. And what that is items that are not in a spendable form, such as inventory, prepaid assets, long-term receivables is what that represents. Then category number 2 is called restricted, and that's going to be amounts that are set by outside external parties. And that balance, that amount right there, represents our debt service. It represents our debt service for the next year. Then the next category is committed. Now, the committed is something that historically the city of Owensboro does not have, and what that means is it's a self-imposed limitation. So if the commission, if you all were to want to set aside funds that were restricted and not available for spend for any other reason, for the operating budget, for debt service, it's a self-imposed limitation that you all could set that, and you would set that prior to year end, and we would reserve that amount. But we don't have that, and we've not had that since I've been here. But it is a GASB category. Then there's assigned, and that is a limitation resulting from an intended use. By example, could be working capital. If you had committed to something outside of the norm and you wanted to set aside, what it is just kind of earmarking funds that can't be touched for any other reason. And again, we've not had that. And then unassigned is the amounts that you all have the flexibility and the legal authority to, spend. If you wanted to do something above and outside what we approved in our original budget, we would do an ordinance, and by that we would commit the funds from the fund balance, from this unassigned balance, and we would do a budget budget amendment, and have 2 readings for an ordinance to use those funds.
One last question, Mayor, please.
Sure.
Over the last, whatever years, maybe 5, 8 years, if we had this policy in place during that time frame, how many times would we have been potentially below that, or is that going to have to do a little bit of research to go backwards and look and see if there was a time? Because I think that maybe that occurred 3 years ago or so, possibly. But was that a trend, and did that get reversed?
I would like to go back and check my numbers to be sure in order to answer that. I don't recall where we got dangerously below the
this.
2-month, because if at one point in time our fund balance was $14.6 million, and with that decline, I think we pretty much always had the 2-month reserve in there. It's this going forward is when it looked like we were going to dip below it, and then that's when the staff approached the commission requesting the tax increases, and that was granted, which kept us above that 2-month minimum. So I don't recall us going below that, but I would prefer to check to be sure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
You're
ma'am.
welcome.
You're welcome. Anybody else? You want me to call on now, Nate? I recognize Leland Hancock, Assistant City Manager. OBKY update.
Mayor and Commission, thank you. This afternoon, I'll give you a quick update. Obviously, the OBKY project is a long list of a lot of different items, many recommendations there. The first of which, I'll talk about today, will be the Mayor's Mile. It's a 1-mile walking course within our downtown, walking/running. I've walked it, not run it yet. It is 1 mile, so if any of our runners or walkers out there, check it. It is accurate. So I'd like to thank Tanner West and Stephen Franklin as well for helping us get the artwork and our banners produced. So you'll see these banners roughly about every 1/10 of a mile on existing light poles throughout that course. And you'll see it starts, if you want to start roughly around the River Park Center, take you around the downtown riverfront, turn left at the Convention Center, up and around the front of the Convention Center, and then back down 2nd Street, and then left on Davis back into the downtown again, park. So it is an accurate map. Thank everybody for their help on that. Currently, Tim Ross and I are trying to develop an event so we can debut that, and then we'll be adding Miley, the pig, onto that route as well. So when that piece is ready, we'll add that to it. So the next piece up, part of the recommendation.
Can I ask you one question?
Yes, sir.
Are there any extra liability for us creating this little run and designating it by the city? Nate's shaking his head. He's not going to let you answer, so I'll just let it go. Okay, go ahead.
It's open to the public, and you can walk.
I
on
just
now, so.
curious, close
This
to
is
the
just
river
sort of-
and all that stuff. So.
Sure.
Thank you.
One of the recommendations was there be some sort of community city finance reporting. And I want to thank Angela Hamrick and Felicia Wimsett for their efforts in producing this report that we'll finish at the end of this month. And basically, it's going to be a popular annual report. It's going to summarize and simplify our exhaustive budget manual into a more graphic and somewhat easier to understand explanation of what city government does, where the money comes from, where the money goes, a lot of the different things that are going on within our budget process and how our finances run. So they've done a great job. They'll finish that this month, and they'll present that to you. in early
And when did you say the Mayor's Mile thing's gonna be done?
We're basically ready to order the banners, and then we're going to do that probably late spring, a little warmer weather. We've got to get in line with the Kentucky Legend event and have the pigs ready and those types of things. So probably just before or after the barbecue festival.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And the finance thing is ready when?
At the end of January.
This January. Okay.
It'll be available online as well. We'll present to you all, but the public will be able to view that online. Next up will be an entertainment district. That's one of the exciting things we've got going on as well. It will give you that ability to move within our downtown by permit during your event. We have our permit submitted. We've had our site visit by the state ABC office, and we've been working with the Friday After 5 board, Tim Ross and I both, scheduling that event. And if all goes well, we're looking at a March approval on our EDC, and then the first Friday After 5 will be the first use of that and the debut of our entertainment district. And so basically, we'll help them develop that area that they want to use, roughly along 2nd Street there, and then within the park to go in between the River Park Center and the Convention Center for that type of event. So they're pretty excited about it, and they've been a great help to us on that project. Next up is another small item. I won't call it a small item, but it's something customer service and
You
customer
already
service
did.
training. It's not as exhaustive as some of the others. You know, customer service is what the business that we're in. You know, there are individuals that may not see the public ever in their jobs, and there's other individuals in the city that see them every day. Some see them multiple times a day, from our sanitation department that sees each household once a week, to fire and police that come to you at your time of need. So I've worked with Josh Bachmeyer and KLC, and they're setting up a training. We'll have that conducted at the end of January as well, and that's another one of the items that we'll have completed on their recommendation list.
So that's the folks downstairs, is that what you're talking about?
That is our silent assassin. I believe that you termed him Josh Bachmeyer. He's our
Josh
HR.
Bachmeyer, the silent assassin. So the customer service, when they put you on hold, is still gonna play that crummy music, or are we gonna advertise the events that we do in our community?
We're working through a lot of those different items firsthand to
Any good one just doesn't
be able to
get it
greet
in.
you professionally, which they do a pretty good job now, so it doesn't hurt any of us to have a little refresher course on that as well. So
Thank
next
you.
item up is a very fun one, was the downtown art project. When I first got with the city, we worked with Mayor Bryant Hood and the art museum there on doing the River Arts project, and so we've got a lot of different sculptures and pieces of art that are displayed in our downtown. And I have to thank the group, Tim Ross again. Of course, he's in the middle of everything, as Tim should be. But Laura Ruth Edge has been a great help on that, and she's identified an artist, and they're currently working on a proposal for us to create yet another mural. So our current mural that we have downtown, one of the most recent, Mr. Austin Caseboat, now the president of the local art guild. If you've seen the side of the CVB with the Owensboro sign there, that's been a great hit, and a lot of pictures, a lot of selfies and different things there. So Laura Ruth's helping us develop, another mural there. We'll probably debut that sometime midsummer.
Another mural on the side of that same building?
No, this will be multiple buildings in the downtown. So we've got several individuals we talked to and working on the permissions there, working with OMPC, and
Who funds that?
that'll be one that'll be up for questions. So we've got folks that will either donate their time and services. We've got individuals that will either sponsor one of those events, but it will not be a cost to the city.
Okay, good.
And the last item I have is the bridge lights. As you may have seen in the paper this weekend. We continue to make progress there. Currently working with the state. We have our permits submitted, and they are reviewing that, but we've got a few items there in that agreement to finalize. And once we finish that, hopefully at the end of this month, we'll be able to jump straight into design and continue that progress.
So we haven't started on the design phase?
No, we have not yet, not until this agreement has been finalized. Other than that, I'll answer any questions you may have on any of the OBKY projects that I've mentioned, or any that are on the list that you want to see come up.
Feels like some progress.
Absolutely. Every day.
Okay, anybody have anything up here? Okay. Thank you, Leland Hancock. Next item, number 5, is the proverbial downtown parking issues. Nate Pagan, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
As you'll recall, the mayor made comments at the State of the City about the need for parking and how the parking garage, although it is a nice amenity, now that it is finished, it is not sufficient in and of itself to probably provide all the parking that is needed. So I know that has spurred some questions and conversations among us and among the community as well. So the mayor asked if I would provide sort of a quick update and some context to that and why we will need additional parking in addition to the garage. And so for context, I'd really like to go back and refer back to the original catalyst projects from the Gateway Plan when it was finalized in 2009, had 5 or 6 kind of catalyst or phase 1 catalyst projects to get started. If you look down the list, you'll see, other than the Arts Academy, which never gained traction, that with the conclusion of the parking garage, we have finalized now the catalyst projects, which then kind of turns us to, well, what's next? If you'll remember in the plan, there was a full program. Then from that full program, the catalyst projects were developed, but there were other projects in addition to the catalyst projects which were anticipated that were included in the full program. And if you look in the middle of that bottom paragraph where it talks about a 10 to 12 year period, well, we're 10 years out, so we're doing pretty well. We're basically on schedule, so that's good news, Mayor. So the next slide contains the more fully developed program in addition to the catalyst projects. If you'll see the one highlighted in yellow that the mayor referenced last week, that's the residential units. It seems to be that the residential component is what is gaining traction now. So based on their market demand and their analysis study at the time, they anticipated that we could accommodate 300 to 400 units in downtown. If you look at the third column there, is sort of the crux of the presentation about 1 parking space per unit. That's 300 to 400 spaces, obviously, that would be needed, and that's just for residential. That does not address parking needs, perhaps, for any other development, such as the third hotel that's been proposed. So if you incorporate that, you can see that pretty quickly we could get up to the 400 to maybe even 500 parking space range of what might be needed downtown for the next group or the next phase of the downtown development. We did just, of course, finish and open a parking garage that actually opened yesterday to the public. That garage has 437 spaces in it. We have pledged 1 space to OMU for them to provide a electric car charging station, so should there be an electric vehicle in town that needs charging. So that was a good partnership that they were interested in providing. We have 60 spaces previously allocated to Alorica per the agreements that were agreed to locate Alorica in our community and then in downtown in particular. In the green, we are anticipating setting aside about 25% of the parking garage for public use. As you'll recall, the garage is now done, and so we'll start making debt payments on that project as we typically do. The principal for the debt will be generated by the downtown TIF. In order for it to be refundable or the debt paid by the downtown TIF, it has to be public infrastructure, which means part of it has to be open to the public. So we cannot fully lease out the garage in order to maintain its public infrastructure requirement. The finance or economic development cabinet would not give us a firm percentage for what would be required to remain open to the public, but we feel pretty comfortable by saying 25% or an amount not to exceed 25% being available to the public would keep us compliant with the public infrastructure requirement. So therefore, we're setting aside 109 spaces or 25% to remain available for the public for event parking or other parking as needed. So then that leaves 267 spaces which could be programmed or allocated towards specific projects. If you'll think back to the 400 to 500 range, then obviously that's half to 2/3 potentially of what we might need. So that is something that I think that we collectively will be dealing with over the next few months. So just wanted to kind of explain how and why the parking garage, as the mayor alluded to, in and of itself is not sufficient.
What is the maximum number we have to provide Alorica? Is this 60?
All that we're contractually obligated to as of now, yes, is 60 in the parking garage.
So is it dependent on how many employees they actually end up with?
Well, there are requirements as far as targeted thresholds of employees, but they have a year or so before they're required to hit that threshold. Mm-hmm. And then really, I believe and Angela, jump in, but I believe the targeted employment and the targeted payroll numbers are attached as well to the 150,000 payments that they can get as incentives.
200.
I'm sorry, 250 for a 6-year period that they have stringent thresholds as far as number of jobs and payroll numbers that they must hit.
So, okay, so they say they have 300 now and they get to 500. Is this 60, number 60, does it go up?
Well, no. So as of now, no.
So that's the maximum amount of spots we'll have to guarantee to their maximum employment.
That we're required to as of now, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And so again, it's something we'll be dealing with for the next few months. We do have options. You know, if we have to provide additional parking, we can always acquire additional property. We can pursue public-private partnerships as the developers develop property that we could help offset their costs on their site in addition to off-site, or regulatory changes. You know, there are certain requirements per Article 21 that they have certain parking requirements. Those vary by location, so we do have some flexibility, I believe, as far as how we could implement or potentially change from a zoning requirement how many spaces are needed. However, I think the developers would say whatever is needed from a regulatory standpoint is one thing, but then the market would dictate that they have a certain amount of parking as well. So, you know, that is something we could potentially try. And then also, you know, we've had some discussions about on-site or on-street parking because there is a fair amount of on-street parking that is currently underutilized in areas that may develop in a residential nature.
So that change would have to go through planning and zoning?
Well, ultimately, it would be through us. I mean,
Through us.
yeah,
We
and
could do it without
I've talked to Brian Howard. He said he'd be comfortable with anything that we would recommend that is reasonable.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Smith.
Have a couple of questions. On the public parking spaces, is that located on just one level, or is it just throughout the, and so it will just, what, will it be tagged as public parking? How will they know?
No, I think the way I understand it, because I asked the same question, Commissioner, is that it's got an access control system that's all computerized, and so the computer knows how many of the spots are occupied and how many are available. So, you know, the 60 for Alorica, for example, may not have 60 that say, you know, reserved for Alorica, because the computer will know that there are 60 allocated to Alorica and any other potential tenants. So it's all done by computer. And so when it fills up, you know, there's signage out there that will then say no vacancies or something to that effect.
So Alorica employees will have like a tag, a badge or
That's right.
something.
So they'll have an access control card that will lift the gate, and then there'll be no
that
charge,
makes
of course, for them.
Good question.
Okay, and my other question is, you know, we've been talking about getting residents downtown, and Ed sitting back there, how many residents would be in that complex, the hotel, private residents?
The third hotel, possibly?
Yes, possibly the third hotel. Is it okay for me to ask him?
I don't think we have that information.
Commissioner, I appreciate the question, and I didn't come prepared to speak to you all today, but you know, right now that complex there has a target of 160 units, but I think that it's you know, really important to distinguish what is trying to go in down there and what's going to create density, and that's affordable housing. You know, there is high-end housing available today downtown. But the person that works, you know, at one of the locations downtown, or somebody that wants to live in the urban area downtown, that's what's not available to them right now. So right now, a plan for 160 units at that location, but I know that both our development company and others are looking at putting additional units. We think that around 600 units between Brescia and the river is really what's needed to create that density. So that's the target, and working with all those various entities to kind of see what really makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, I just was thinking that, you know, we've been talking about getting people downtown. We have to get people downtown, but if we've got to have the parking, then we've got to somehow work together to meet the parking needs and the people having place to stay or to live.
I would agree, and I
downtown
think,
work.
I would agree, and one of the things that I think you need to keep at the forefront of your mind when you look at development downtown is there's basically, two elements that comes into play when you look at whether or not something's affordable. And that's everyone's goal, is affordable mass housing downtown. Well, if you look at the price of land down there right now, and you look at the price of construction right now, you put those two together, and if you have to add parking on top of that without some municipal help, you've already shot way outside of any realm of affordable housing. And that's really the goal. And so that's why I think it's going to take a partnership amongst different developers, amongst the municipalities, and amongst the public, and understanding what's available. You all have created the retail and the restaurant industry down there, and there's more spaces to open up. And like the mayor pointed out in his State of the City, you have the recreational facilities. And as the mayor had in his State of the City, I think you're brilliant in bringing up the fact that the residential is that third kind of leg to the stool. And that makes sense to us from an economic perspective, but we want to continue to work with Nate and the rest of your staff to figure out a parking solution for development downtown to really attract residential.
Thank you. I'll have this solved tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay, Commissioner Pro Tem Larry Maglinger. Ed,
I got a question for you, Ed.
told him to wait till you sat down.
I was trying to jump in quick, but we're talking about affordable housing. Give me an idea of what we're talking about as far as affordable.
Well, something affordable today and affordable 2 years from now aren't necessarily the same thing. But when you talk about a 900 to 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, you need to have that price point to something that's equivalent to what you might get out on one of the apartment complexes. Chandler's a great example. It's very nice living. We need more of that type of living. If you bring that model and that price point downtown, if you can make the numbers work to construct it, then I think that will attract your retirees, your millennials, your small families that want to come down there and live and be able to walk to that recreation, that retail, and that restaurant business that they have down there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So did you say what Chandler's 1-bedroom with, or 2-bedroom with 1 bath, and what is their price point? That I don't know.
No, I did not say, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
But you can get an apartment in Owensboro. I think there's a shortage of apartments. I think there's a need for good complexes like the one that we're developing behind the old Texas Gas building, for instance. And that price point from anywhere from $600 to $1,200 in there, with a place that has some recreational facilities, has some amenities, the yard's taken care of, the grounds are nice, is something that's very doable in downtown. And then, bigger units obviously demand a higher price. But I think right now, looking at our market, that's probably what's considered affordable when you compare it to single-family homes and what the rent are for those.
Not counting parking.
And that does not bring in any cost of development and or acquisition of parking in the downtown. Not at the prices that property is going for in downtown.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else on parking, Nate?
Mayor.
Okay. Just how many short do you think we are?
Well, again, if you refer back to the number previously, it's 500 to 600, and we're at 237 or 267, I believe. So we're in
Halfway home.
that's more or less accurate.
Okay, thank you. City project, did you have something else? City project list, city manager, Nate Fagan.
It's in your packet. If you have any questions, the staff is happy to address them.
Dog park, spring of 19, is that still legit?
Yes, sir.
I got 3 nods and 3 eyes rolled back over there. Okay, so we can count on the 2 months from now then. That's the spring, right? Okay. I have a question that people ask me all the time, and I thought this would be a nice, I'm not trying to blindside you, because I've already asked you this before, but a quick synopsis of just exactly the tax increment financing development on 54 and downtown and how they may differ. And whenever day one starts, do you remember those numbers that you told me about for downtown that included and excluded the hotel? No, I don't believe
I do not, Mayor. I will say that we plan in the work session in February next month to give a more thorough kind
Okay.
of overview of the TIFs.
Did not know that. All right. Do we have any discussion on the softball complex renovation analysis? That looks like a yes. Sorry, I figured you might know since it was on the list, so I would not trying to
I know a little bit
blindside
about
you.
it, Mayor, just a little.
Good.
I'm
You
working
know
with-
more than we do then.
Yeah, to get you updated, I'm working with Chad McCormick from LD&D Design out of Louisville, and we've been in communication quite regularly over the last several weeks. Our intent is to, by the end of this month, or the first week of February, bring to you all a menu of items for improvements at that location. Things such as improving the drive entry, the facilities within the complex, and of course, primarily the field conditions there. So we anticipate giving you an idea of what those capital costs would be, annual maintenance costs would be, and how we believe those would improve marketing and staying competitive in this business.
Will that be included in your budget for next year?
You will
Or
direct
we
me on
will-
that, sir. Yeah, we'll
Pardon
bring
me?
you the menu items and give you an idea of the value for each and those costs associated with each. And then my hope would be that we get some direction from you as an elected body on how we want to include that in the budget next year.
And this would be all borne by the city of Owensboro taxpayers, is that correct?
That's most likely correct, yes, sir.
Okay, so when we give fields away to a non-city of Owensboro participant, it's not a city function, let's put it that way. How does that work out?
I think it's all in perspective, Mayor, and that really is guided by you
You've
all.
You've been doing this too long.
It's all in perspective and guided by how you look at that. I mean, there is some value to us, and to be able to give you a direct formula to say for fact it's this dollar amount per game, I can't. I can give you the tourism formula that the state dictates. I can tell you that without the sports tourism that we do through soccer, football, and softball, that I firmly believe we wouldn't have a need for the number of hotels and the number of restaurants in our community. I do believe that sports and recreational tourism plays a big factor in our economy here locally. But to be able to say for a fact it's this dollar amount, no, sir, I can't give that to you.
I wasn't asking you for a dollar amount. I'm more curious as these people use our facility, and they years and years, and we've got a great place out there at Fisher, and as we try and look and see if there's opportunity to maybe do formal fields, I just want some thought to go into the fact that if we're going to share our own facility that's fed by our own tax dollars, we make sure if we partner with somebody that's going to wear them out and do the things that they do, that we look at all those angles before we kind of jump in there, if you know what I mean.
Yes, sir. And I will tell you that we're also looking at a rebranding campaign for that. Of course, it's the Owensboro Softball Complex at Jack C. Fisher Park. Keep in mind that probably 90% of the events we do are not softball any longer. The market's changed. Of course, when I was much younger, it was softball and adults, and a lot of youth softball play. And we're seeing less of that and more baseball. So we have a lot of young men coming to play baseball at the Owensboro Softball Complex. So it would be fitting that if we are going to make changes to that facility, that we also look at rebranding at the same time.
I was thinking that the other night when I watched, or last time I drove by there, and there's 500 little urchins out there about that tall. You know, I didn't think any of them were playing softball at all. So I think that's a good idea to be looking. And I would say you have to redesign your fields a little bit, won't you? Because the way that thing's skinned all the way out to almost to the fence of a softball.
That's probably going to be one of the more significant costs, no matter what we do. Originally, we were drain to grade, and we don't have any drainage system out there. So that is, as we're looking at costs associated with these changes for the fields, that's probably one of the larger costs that we're looking into.
I knew you'd know.
I try, Mayor.
Trying good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Sanford.
Hey, Amanda, how much are we talking just on a brand-new field? How much money does it cost to, like the field in the back at Fisher that's kind of like used as, how much would it cost to convert that into a field? Just rough.
If we were to take the fifth field now and add fencing, lighting, without restrooms,
Right.
just looking at scoreboard, electrical, lighting, and fencing, it's about $150,000.
Okay.
But we're looking at other options for that as well. So we've got some pricing to turn that into a field. As part of what we're working with LD&D, we're looking at turning that into parking as well. So we're going to bring several options to you.
All right.
We're also looking at other amenities of that location, like batting cages.
Okay. Thank you.
You can tell we're excited about the opportunities. That's why we're trying to get a jump on the LLD or whatever it is,
Yeah.
ADA or whatever it is. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Amanda. Anybody? I have one more question, and I guess it's for Miss Abby. Was that a condescending grin you gave me there? What was that?
No,
Like,
that was
yeah,
just,
you
that was a
almost-
smile, Mayor. I was
There
happy
you
to.
go. Curious about the triplet twist district. We're not going to talk about anything other than the lot that was sold, that we bought in front of the other, that fixture, and the store, pawn shop across the street.
Yes, sir.
And what is the status of that property? Is it on the market? Has anybody ever looked at it? You know, we paid $700,000 or something.
Yes,
But was
sir.
that CBG or is that real money?
No, it was CDBG funds, yes.
Okay. So we got $800,000 invested in those two lots.
Subsidized taxpayer funds, yes, sir.
Okay, so I have to go by there every night on the way home. I just try and visualize what's going on there. So is there any discussion about?
The hope was that we paired that property, 1928 Triplet Street, along with the one across Kitty Corner that held the pawn shop property, and the said property, 1926 Triplet Street, adjacent to our corner that we own, and do an RFP and RFQ for a developer to buy those properties together with our properties as incentive to develop that entire area. Now that we are kind of in a holding pattern as to what will happen on that lot, on those lots, on that corner, I await direction as to where we need to go next. So we can put those up for sale if you would like, and all the income that we would receive from the sale of those lots would go back into program income to CDBG funds, so we can use it further in the triplet twist area and or the next NRSA.
So even if we sold it, it's not going to the general fund balance thingamajig, right?
No, sir, correct.
Going back to you so you can find a better place to spend that money.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything? All right, hearing nothing else, thank you all for coming, and I'll make a motion to adjourn. Could I have a second, please? All in
Second.
favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you.